Daily Devotion with Pastor Balla for August 12th, 2022 from Ezekiel chapter 23, The Two Sisters, Part 1. In chapter 23, God is going to use the illustration of two sisters. This will represent the people of Israel, the northern tribes and the southern tribes. We need to remember that this is an illustration that God has used a little bit previously when he describes his relationship with the people of Israel as husband and wife. It's a beautiful relationship that even in the New Testament we hear about the bride of Christ. But what happens when God's people chase after fake gods or leave the Almighty God and chase after idols or false religions? God had used the illustration that his wife then plays the whore. That is, going after somebody else instead. So, Ezekiel chapter 23 is going to pick up this image again. From chapter 23, verse 1. The word of the Lord came to me, Son of man, there were two women, the daughters of one mother. They played the whore in Egypt. They played the whore in their youth. There their breasts were pressed and their virgin bosoms handled. So, the two sisters were from the same mother. And this could be a beautiful reference to the people of Israel coming from Abraham. And Abraham was faithful. But it didn't take too many generations beyond Abraham for the people of Israel to become unfaithful. Verse 4, Oholah was the name of the elder, and Oholibah the name of her sister. They became mine, and they bore sons and daughters. As for their names, Aholah is Samaria, and Oholibah is Jerusalem. Here, God definitely describes the two sisters as the people of God from Samaria and Jerusalem. But the important thing was that God said, they became mine. God didn't immediately punish them for their sins and their disobedience, and God still considered them his people, even though they had rebelled and fallen short of God's glory. Verse 5, Oholah played the whore while she was mine, and she lusted after her lovers, the Assyrians, warriors clothed in purple, governors and commanders, all of them desirable young men, horsemen, riding on horses. God now gives us a little bit of insight to their lust, so to speak. What were they coveting? They were desiring what the other nations around them had. The power, the protection, especially from the Syrians, instead of trusting in the Almighty God for their protection. Verse 7, she bestowed her whoring upon them, the choicest men of Assyria, all of them, and she defiled herself with all the idols of everyone after whom she lusted. She did not give up her whoring that she had begun in Egypt, for in her youth men had lain with her and handled her virgin bosom and poured out their whoring lust upon her. So God is using the illustration that the people of Israel wanted the Assyrians so much that God gave them the Assyrians, or maybe better to say, God gave his people to the Assyrians. Verse 9, therefore I delivered her into the hands of her lovers, into the hands of the Assyrians, after whom she lusted. These uncovered her nakedness. They seized her sons and her daughters. As for her, they killed her with the sword, and she became a byword among women when judgment had been executed on her. Very much like the cliche in today's world, be careful what you wish for, you may get it. Again, this is part of the punishment phase that God was going to bring upon the people of Israel, basically saying, this is what you wanted, this is what you asked for, this is what you really desired, and God gave it to them. While we live in a constantly changing world, we need to realize that nations will rise and nations will fall. Regardless whether the nation is rising or falling, we need to continue to put our faith and trust in God. Is it easier to put our faith and trust in God when things are going well? Or is it easier to put our faith and trust in God when things are not going well? Well, for the people of Israel, they were putting their faith and trust in other countries instead of the Almighty God. So in the midst of things that we cannot understand, we need to remember that God is always with us. God is always loving us, and God is always forgiving us. So we need to put our faith and trust in Him, regardless what our country or the rest of the countries around us may seem to be doing, whether they're rising or falling. We put our faith and trust in God alone. God's peace and many blessings be with you, and thank you for listening. And please take an opportunity to share this message with others. If you have enjoyed these daily devotions, please consider making a donation to Peace Lutheran Church, 24024 West Main Street, Plainfield, Illinois, 60544. Thank you again for listening.